Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Playing outlawed tunes on outlawed pipes.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. From beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Coming to you after a week off that I had to take in order to preserve my sanity, but upon returning, I have to ask myself a very critical question. Dear God, what have we become? Looking to Twitter, looking to the latest news feeds, seeing reports in Salem that Antifa and Trump supporters are about to square off. This is not what our forefathers envisioned. All that and more coming up here on the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
The American people are frustrated because their elected officials don't listen. When we're home on the campaign trail, we say we listen. And yet something about this Senate floor, something about Washington, D.C., I don't know if it's the water, something in the air, the cherry blossom, but people get here and they stop listening to the American people.
What we witnessed here today in the Security Council is an insult. It won't be forgotten. It's one more example of the United Nations doing more harm than good in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
My duty, and the sacred duty of every elected official, last chamber is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Senators, members of Congress, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. President. You had one damn job.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Lanterns Media Network proudly brings to you the HoloNet podcast here from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. We're back! That's right. Can't keep a good man down. Can't be defeated. Often imitated, never duplicated. Insert your cliche here. But hey, had to take a week off, preserve the sanity, and then I come back to Alex Jones getting thrown off of YouTube, apparently. That's right, late last night, late Saturday. Alex Jones, the Alex Jones channel on YouTube, posted an emergency transmission on one of their backup channels, which is the InfoWars Censored. You can check that out if you want some serious brain damage and a possible nosebleed. Alex Jones is calling out that he is being subjected to YouTube censorship now that several advertisers following a story on CNN have complained to YouTube and yanked their advertising dollars from his show. It seems that Alex Jones is in some trouble. So I have to join a lot of people in saying, gee, that took longer than I thought. I haven't found InfoWars to be the fount of journalistic integrity that some people believe it to be. There's not a lot of good things I can really say about the work that they do over at InfoWars. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. I just really am not. I find them to be the modern-day yellow journalists. I find them to be conspiratorial, conspiracy theorists, and your mileage may vary. If you enjoy them, you enjoy them. If you like the spectacle and you like the awful lot of sizzle that results in absolutely no steak, God love you. But here's what I need to come down to. Last week, and, not last week, the week before, I felt the thumb of the man pressing down on the back of my neck when on this very broadcast, 2 minutes in to our broadcast, when I shared this post to our Lanterns Buzz group page, which I'm a member, and this is a Lanterns Buzz broadcast, so you'd think there'd be no problem. Nope, boom, slapped with a week-long ban, and I had a lot of time to think about it, and I got online, and I pissed, moaned, and complained like you expect everybody to, like Alex Jones is doing right now, but at the end of the day, Facebook is a private company. It is a private service. So I'm looking at this from a true blue conservative perspective. If Facebook doesn't want to carry my content, they damn well don't have to. Alex Jones, if YouTube does not want to carry your content, they damn well don't have to, man. You have your own webpage, which, unlike the holonet.com, which, by the way, everybody please log on to the holonet.com before Facebook finally throws me the hell off. Facebook.com can ban people. YouTube.com can ban people. Infowars.com has huge numbers. I mean, hugely big. I mean, if I pull the Alexa on... So let me see. Alexa rating... I'm going to pull this right now, real time. The Alexa rating for InfoWars, because I really, really want to know. What does this look like? So let's search this out. Let's find this website, Infowars.com. I'm pretty sure this is going to be big, okay? Infowars.com. It's not searching. I don't know why. Okay, Alexa's not giving me that data. That's funny. I can pull the holonet.com on here, and it shows that, for 2 minutes 6 months ago, I was actually rated when I posted my story, Califeudal, about California seeking to secede from the Union. That was the hottest story I ever had on the holonet. But InfoWars has their own dedicated feature base. I mean, they have their own dedicated customer base. So let me see. I'll just search it. InfoWars traffic. And let's see if I can just get a good number here. Okay. Total visits, 21.12 million. Average duration, 3 minutes, 39 seconds. Pages per visit, 2. So most people, 21.12 million, are visiting the page for 3.5 minutes and reading 2 stories. That's pretty damn stellar from a marketing perspective. Now, in the 9-to-5, the job, I handle marketing for a company. I'm also a sales manager. These are the things that I do. Okay? Those are solid numbers. Those are numbers that go beyond the dreams of avarice for most small-time guys like me. I think if I ever crack 10K on the HoloNet, I may actually require a change of shorts. I have to check with Dylan and Steven. I don't know what they've cracked on Defenders of American Exceptionalism. I know Lanterns has done pretty well. It has ranked on Alexa a couple of times. But at the end of the day, you have your own site, dude! You have a prominent site! It's like PragerU is primarily YouTube-based, primarily Facebook-based. I get it. InfoWars, you have your own site. You host your own videos, man. So you have an alternative. Now, I'm going to admit, I got pretty upset when Facebook hit me with the 10-ton hammer 2 weeks ago because I don't have another venue. I don't. I get on Spreaker, I get on SoundCloud, I get on iTunes, iHeartRadio, which all of them I like a lot. But, as far as my ability to reach out and get my content in front of people, as far as that goes, I need social media. I need to use Facebook. I need to use Twitter. I use both. So if they both decide to slam the door on me, I'm pretty much done. Hoping they don't wake up and realize that one day. But that's the case for a lot of small-time conservative podcasters and people who do their own YouTube shows. We depend on these things. But we must remember, we cannot become entitled. I do not have an intrinsic right to Facebook. I do not have an intrinsic God-given right to a YouTube channel. I don't have a right to a Twitter handle. I don't have rights to these things. These are private systems that were developed by private corporations and are governed by their codes of conduct. Now, here's where the law comes into play. When you have terms of use and you have community standards, they need to be applied evenly. They need to be applied equally and equivalently from one person to another. Because if they're not, then you have a case for preferential treatment and discrimination and breaking a contract, which is a heck of a lot different from people saying, oh, I have a right to... No, you don't, scrub! You don't have a right to anything! You don't have a right to Facebook or Twitter. All you have is the terms of use, which are in effect an agreement between you and the service provider. And you know what most of those terms of use have in it? Shh, it's a big secret. that they have the right to refuse your service. And the right to refuse service is something that has been enshrined by conservatives since the dawn of this country. And it's something that we're fighting a huge battle over right now, where, those bakers out of, I think it was Oregon, AJ might know better than me, he's from Oregon, where there were, or was it Colorado? I can't remember anymore. This was like a year ago, where they're required to bake a cake for a gay couple. And they didn't want to do that. Well, they don't have the right to refuse service in that case. So now it's becoming warped. So if you are a principled conservative and you get crap kicked off of Facebook, or you get the 10-ton hammer nailed on you by YouTube, Alex Jones, then you know what? By your principles, you've got to accept it. You've got to accept it and move on and find a new way to reach your audience. Find a different way to reach your audience. Somebody was commenting on this video that Alex Jones put up. You have the resources. You have the manpower. You definitely have the money. Get out there and create your own dang social network for conservative conspiracy cranks if you want to. You can do that. That's what this country is about. We don't just sit and take what we're given. So yeah, I've made peace. If Facebook decides to crap can my show, Facebook decides to crap can my show. It would suck. It would suck the chrome off a bumper. It would suck crap through a garden hose. I mean, I've been working on this page for 6 years. You know, I've got a pretty good follower count and like count. And I'm pretty proud of that. But Facebook's got the right, man. And so does YouTube. And so does BitChute. And if you don't like YouTube, get on BitChute. They changed their name to Speak Out for like 5 minutes, but nobody liked it, so now it's back to BitChute. And by the way, you can catch the HoloNet on BitChute.com. We have our own channel there. You can also, if you want to support the show, if you want to help our hopeful soon transition to the AM radio airwaves, you can also log on to patreon.com. If you don't like Patreon because they're also feeling censory, you can log on to makersupport.com. We're also there as well. So what are your thoughts? What are your feelings? You know, we're live. We're on Facebook Live right now, as long as they keep me up there. We're on Twitter. Go ahead and tweet at the HoloNet. That's at the HoloNet on Twitter. Let me know what you're thinking. I'm open to hearing your analyses and all this, but let me tell you about a quick little Twitter exchange that went back and forth between me and a good friend of mine who is in the media, who is in radio broadcast, and, you know, has experienced a good strong kick in the teeth before. Because what I jumped out on, The Blaze published, it looks like on the 2nd of March here, 2 days ago, that Orrin Hatch apologizes for calling supporters of Obama policy, quote-unquote, dumbass people. Sorry if I was supposed to censor that. I don't know. And I replied, breaking, Senator Orrin Hatch apologizes for making accurate statement. Ha ha ha. Serious question, though. If it's all right to call half the country deplorable, then is it all right to call the other half of the country, you know, dumbasses? Is that all right, then? Does that make sense? Because I'll be damned if I haven't been called every name in the book. I mean, I've been called a teabagger. I've been called a Trump tard. Hell, I've been called a cuck a couple of times. That was fun. Just because I didn't immediately jump on the Trump train. But I asked, is it all right to call the other half, you know, dumbasses? And I added hashtag tribalism, hashtag go my team, hashtag divided we stand, and hashtag culture war. Because, dear God, man, what have we become? We've become a nation where there's no equivalency. It's well, you know, they called us that, so I can call them this. And, you know, I pulled out one of the texts that I keep near my bedside, near and dear to my heart. You know, it's right there. It's right there with the Holy Bible, King James Version. And it's right there with the Constitution of the United States. And I'm going to show it to you right now on the Facebook Live. It's 365 Ways to Drive a Liberal Crazy by James Delingpole. The reason that I have that book up today is not a plug for James Delingpole. I have no idea who the hell that is. It's because one of the leading trends trends on Twitter right now at this hour is hashtag trigger a conservative in 2 words. You believe that? It is on Twitter as one of the top trends in the United States right now. It is the 4th highest trending. Trigger a conservative in 2 words. I mean, it's almost catching up to the Oscars. An hour ago, it actually was just behind the Oscars because nobody cares about the Oscars. Nobody cares about the Oscars. And I'm going through these, and some of them are pretty upsetting. But, like, trigger conservative in 2 words. Hillary won. No, she didn't. There's such a thing as a electoral college. Sorry, buddy. Amelia said, outspoken teenagers. No. Tommy Lauren. I'll counter that with Tommy Lauren. Matt Couch said, at Real Matt Couch, another great radio host, said, Hillary Clinton. Yeah, we beat her. Yeah, and a lot of people are just saying liberals can't meme, and Raven said diversity matters. And then, notice anything about the Huffington Post editors meeting where they all appear to be Caucasian women. So this is just hysterical. If you haven't had the chance to get on Twitter and check these out, this is what it's come down to now. We're hashtag warring. It's the culture war. Trigger a conservative in 2 words. And we turn around and we start cracking on liberals, and liberals are cracking on us. And like I said, I pull out my 365 ways to drive a liberal crazy, and I was half tempted to just start tweeting, just tweeting screenshots straight out of the book. Just take a picture of it with my phone, tweet. I could do it 365 times. Probably get sued by James Dowling, Paul, but I don't know, maybe they'll like the publicity from, the dozens and dozens of HoloNet listeners. But we really need to think about this. This is what it's come down to. It is nothing but, go my team, and go team go, and left bad, right good, blue bad, red good. And it's all that's come down to. And, folks, there's some problems in the White House. President Trump doesn't seem to have so much shot himself in the foot here, rhetorically speaking, more like blown his leg off with his proposed 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum. That caused the Dow Jones to suddenly do stock numbers by Sybil. Up, down, up, down, up, down, drop 500. I don't even know what it actually ended out at. I mean, I should really check this. Let's see. Let's go to Google News Business. Oh, it's got to be on here somewhere. It's got to be on here somewhere. Did they bury it? I think they buried it. Yep, it's buried. So let me see. What did the Dow Jones close at on Friday? What did the Dow Jones close at? Okay, so the Dow Jones is at 24,538. So let me just flip to the news on the Dow Jones. Yeah. Sharp. Yeah. Wow, call it a comeback. Everybody was screaming that the world was over. It actually finished up 0.5%. I don't know how. But like I said, it was stock numbers by Sybil. Markets now, everything rallies but the Dow as tariff tantrum continues. With President Trump saying trade wars are good. Now, a couple of our Lanterniers hopped on Facebook. I think it was Watson Prunier of Battle for Freedom, and he posed an excellent question here. He said, find a trade war that actually worked. Now, that might have been Jonathan Dunn of Freedom's Disciple, too. I'll double-check that. But I haven't been able to find a single trade war that this country, or any country, has actually won once willfully engaged. I can't get it figured here. So basically pissing on China, what's that going to accomplish for us? A tariff is a tax on the consumer. Because if you think corporate America is going to absorb that, there's a bridge up by Lake Havasu I'd love to sell you. They're not going to absorb those costs. They're going to pass those straight on to us, which is why many industries are expecting layoffs now. Despite the gains that we created through the tax reform, now companies are talking about layoffs. Now we're talking about price hikes in durable goods like washers and dryers and things like that. But at its heart, what is the conservative movement? Is the conservative movement protectionist? No! The conservative movement is about laissez-faire economics. It's about letting the invisible hand do its job. The invisible hand is the natural ebb and flow of finance and of commerce that the government must and should only regulate as minimally as possible. As minimally as it can to make sure that there's a set of ground rules that everybody plays by. That is what we believe in as conservatives. What have we become as conservatives? Have we become protectionist thugs who just want the government to use their jackboot to jump on anybody internationally who offers a product or service cheaper than we can domestically? Check your history books, kids. This is how you start a depression. Do you want a depression? This is how we get a depression. I got news for you. Putting a 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum when here in the United States we don't really make steel and aluminum anymore is going to result in some pretty significant problems that are not going to clear themselves up anytime soon. Granted, it will in the long term create an opportunity for American businesses to grow, for American steel concerns and aluminum concerns to grow, but in the meanwhile, it is going to result in a massive supply shortfall. Why? Because it takes time to ramp up production. There are steel mills dotted through the United States that have been shuttered for 20 years. Could they be turned back up and cranked back on? Sure they could. Can it be done in a month? No. Retooling takes longer than that. Dear God, never mind hiring, training, safety testing, all the other things that have to happen in order to make a steel mill work. Very good friend of mine, guy by the name of John. His father was slinging steel back in the early 90s. If I'm not mistaken, and John can yell at me on Facebook for this later, his father lost his job. His father was a steel worker. His father lost his job in the 1990s, despite the booming economy of the Clinton era. Booming. Yeah, he lost his job because of NAFTA and other reasons that absolutely gutted the American steel industry. So, was President Trump right that NAFTA needs to change, that the Trans-Pacific trade was a terrible idea, the TPP? Yes. Because tying us unequally yoked to other countries is foolhardy. It denies us the ability to maneuver within the market and denies us the ability to negotiate for the best possible outcomes. But slapping this one-size-fits-all 25% tariff on steel and 10% tariff on aluminum, George W. Bush tried that crap. It went so badly, he pulled it back in like a year. And this is a Texas oil man doing it. Are you kidding? When the world starts to retaliate, it's going to hurt. If you got to replace your fridge, I'd do it now. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump into the news. As I stated earlier during the live startup, our cold open, it looks like Antifa and Trump supporters are getting ready to face off here in Seattle. In Salem, Oregon. I have to touch base with my good friend AJ about that one. And in addition to that, 53 years to the day, marchers are gathering in Selma, Alabama to mark the anniversary of the 1965 Civil Rights March there. And it's another opportunity for us to look back at how divided our nation has become. How we are living in the Civil Cold War, or the Cold Civil War. I haven't figured out which one I like better yet, which one is more grammatically accurate. Either way, it sucks. But the cold Civil War is real. We are doing everything but shooting at each other right now. Very good buddy of mine back home in New Jersey is an ardent Second Amendment supporter. Ardent supporter. And he is terrified of some of the laws that Trenton is brewing up right now. He's horrified. And he wanted to come on this show and talk about it. But the man is sincerely concerned for his way of life if he should. Because the unions are strong. And the unions are blue. All that and more when we come back. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
fellow citizens, recent events have imposed upon the patriotic people of this country a responsibility and a duty greater than that of any since the Civil War.
It is the common people of the world that are interested in this business. They know when we have war, it is they that have to bear the burden. It's their sisters and mothers and daughters that have to wait, trembling, to hear the news.
We are called as a people to give testimony in the sight of the world to our faith that the future shall belong to the free. Since this century's beginning, a time of tempest has seemed to come upon the continents of the earth.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Matt Holloway. Now, coming back from the break, again, it looks like in Salem, Oregon right now, Antifa protesters and Trump supporters about to square off. That's on Facebook Live right now, brought to us by Fox 10 here in Phoenix. If you check that out, there's apparently some very bad language, as you would expect from one of these protests, and viewer discretion is advised. Now, I'm also taking a look into the civil rights march that took place, or is taking place right now as we speak, in Selma, Alabama, and reflecting on how divided our country has become. One person a Charlene jumped up here and said, being of color, I had never experienced so much hatred and division until the Obama administration. The hatred and division came from him. To which Debbie answered, you're right. I'm 66 and I've never seen anything this bad. And Ed responded, he opened every old wound and created even more. And it goes on and on. What this tells me is, at the time that President Barack Obama was elected, the wounds were freshly healed. They couldn't be seen on the skin, but just below, they were lurking. And I grew up in a much different place than I live in now. I live in the West Valley of Arizona, and there's a very, very strong Latino presence here from the Mexican population. There are a few areas where you start to see some African-American influences coming in, but not nearly as much as I experienced back east. I grew up in central New Jersey. I grew up in the melting pot, man. We had everybody. We had African Americans, we had Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, South Americans, Central Americans, Asians, Indians, and Pakistanis, people who were emigres from East and West Africa. It was amazing to grow up right there steeped in as many cultures as I was, and I am very, very fortunate to have experienced that because it granted me a greater understanding of the world beyond where I grew up. I was only 15 minutes from New York City as the crow flies. More like 3 hours in the car, depending on the day. But anyway, I frequently went to New York City and hung out in New York and learned a lot from that. Somehow managed to stay conservative. I don't know how the hell that happened. But I'm glad I did. Okay? I'm really, really glad that I did. Because it allowed me to experience young cultural differences between people and different religions. I've been exposed to Islam. I've been exposed to Buddhism. I've been exposed to every single flavor of Christian you could possibly think of, thanks to a group called the Interdenominational Young Persons Camp, or IYPC, that takes place, or I hope still takes place, up at Pocono Plateau, that my church used to send us along to, and it was a great learning experience. But I digress. I went into a long diatribe there. I'm glad I learned from this in my childhood, and I'd like to make sure my children know a lot of the world. But in my experience, I never experienced division and hatred like we see today during my entire childhood. And I live now somewhere where there's significantly less diversity. So how could I experience a greater divide where there is less to be divided about, less groups to divide? Think of it, I mean, sure, I saw gang fights between, the Indian kids and the Pakistani kids that decided they wanted to relive the last couple of wars that their two countries undertook. That was a big thing that happened during my childhood in the middle of Carteret Park. Exit 12, folks. You might remember that one. But I have never seen racism the way I've seen it in the last 5 years, my whole childhood growing up, where the area between the molecules, so to speak, is greatly compressed, so you'd figure there'd be more friction? Nope. I mean, I was staggered by how quickly our country fractured under President Barack Obama, and how badly it has been exacerbated. And it was first a political division that I was aware of my whole life. Then it was a racial division that seemingly came out of nowhere. I mean, the first time I remember having a racist experience was when a young Latino man, who coincidentally was also a young gay Latino man, but he was also a young gay racist Latino man, where when I went to shake his hand, his initial response was, "Get away from me, you white piece of..." And this is in 6th grade. I was completely unprepared for this. I had never encountered real racism before until just that moment. At the ripe old age of, I think, 10? Something like that? I was stunned. I was shocked. I had tears in my eyes going home that day. I couldn't conceive why he hated me. He'd never even met me. I was welcoming him to class. He was a new kid. And the only sentence he ever said to me was, "Get away from me, you white piece of..." And God, that stuck with me. And people today that tell me there's no such thing as racism or bigotry against white people, you are never going to convince me of that in your entire life. No matter what you say, no matter what statements you make about agency, about power, about who has the advantage, that was bold-faced racism and bigotry. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. I walked over to meet him and was called a white piece of crap and told to get away from him with such hatred in his voice. And that's the first time I really have experienced racism. Now, before that, never. And I grew up immersed in multiculturalism. But that day, I learned to identify what bigotry and racism looked like, what it felt like. And it's kind of like the Supreme Court ruling on what vulgarity is and what profanity is and what indecent content is, where I forget the name of the justice. He said, I can't explain it, but I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. And that is very true of racism and bigotry, especially when it's veiled in this country. And when President Barack Obama came into office, I saw racism on both sides. Yeah, I'm going to say that. I'm going to echo President Trump. There were bad people on both sides because there were racists on both sides. Avenue Q said it right. Everybody's a bit racist. Everybody. Doesn't matter the color of your skin. And it got that much worse when people took your political inclinations and finally locked it in with your race. And that's what the accession of President Obama did. It took those two things and it locked them into place. There was always some significant overlap. I mean, there have always been very few, comparatively, people of color who are rock-ribbed conservatives. The people of color typically vote Democrat. And there were outliers, but it was something that was always, kind of just known and not said. But the election of President Obama cemented that and set the polarization for all time. And made it so if you opposed President Obama, it wasn't because you politically disagreed with him. It was because you were a racist. And that carried through into the Trump administration now, where if you support President Trump, it's not because you think his ideas are good. It's not because you like the people that he appoints into the judicial or into his cabinet positions. It's because you're a racist. Because the two are now inextricably connected, and that is why the only solution to save the soul of conservatism and liberalism and progressivism even, to save our morals and to save our convictions, is to do away with the GOP and the DNC. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that. They have become so tainted, so contaminated with identitarian politics that there is no way to go back. It's fruit from the poison tree. It's a disease of the blood. It's sunk in now. It's festered. And I don't think we can get it out. So now, if you support the GOP, it's because you're a racist. If you support the DNC, it's because you're a multiculturalist and a globalist. Neither are true. What this country needs is a political reset and a multi-party system that is meaningful. So if the GOP is looking for my walking papers, you might need to come pick him up. So I vote my conscience. I vote my soul. And when we have the President of the United States putting out protectionist policies, talking about suspending due process in the Second Amendment? Suspension of due process. This came out of his mouth. If you haven't been listening to talk radio for the last week, everybody's jaw collectively dropped when he said that. When he said, well, due process is too slow. That's not the exact quote, but that's more or less the gist. I mean, I think every conservative in the room and every Republican in the room just went. I mean, a lot of us were just holding our heads going,
holy shit, dude.
And apologists came out in droves and said, oh, that's just President Trump, that's just him talking, that's him throwing them up. I don't think so. I think that's what the guy actually thinks. And, he just shoots off what he thinks, and God bless him. He just shoots off what he thinks. I don't agree with him. Because due process of law is guaranteed in the Constitution, as is the Second Amendment. And if you don't like the Second Amendment, then you know what? You need to put together a group that is dedicated to rescinding the Second Amendment. And if you got the gumption to do that, then we can debate. You're probably going to lose, but we can debate. But when the man who's supposed to be the banner carrier for the conservative movement, President Donald Trump, is talking about protectionist economic policy, when he's talking about removing due process of law, I think every single conservative who voted for him, this guy included, needs to sit back for a second and take stock and go, what have we become? What did I vote for? Is this what I voted for? Did I vote for a president who wants to impose a tax on the consumer? Who wants to engage in a trade war with China when the American economy is probably at the most vulnerable it's been in 70 years? Who earnestly believes, I think, that in the interest of public safety, you can do away with due process of law. There's this crazy guy that did that once. Name was Abraham Lincoln. As the Civil War was in its early stages, the state legislators of Maryland were meeting to discuss secession. Now, President Lincoln knew that, positioned as Washington, D.C. was between Virginia and Maryland, that if Maryland were to secede from the Union, Washington, D.C. would be lost. They would have to immediately evacuate the capital and settle elsewhere, which would have been a catastrophic morale blow to the Union that early in the war. So President Lincoln, in a flagrantly unconstitutional move, suspended the writ of habeas corpus and had the legislators arrested before they could vote on secession. And they were held without trial and without charge for the duration of the war. Now, as I said earlier in the podcast, the cold Civil War is real. And historians have come back later and justified President Abraham Lincoln's actions in the interest of preserving the Union. My question is this: is the Union preserved if you do away with due process? Or will we look back not just on a level of the conservative movement, but will we look back as Americans and say, dear God, what have we become? I can remember growing up in a free country. And I pray God that my children and your children will be able to say the same. But when the president is talking about doing away with due process of law in order to keep the American people safe from mass shooters, Benjamin Franklin said it best. People who are willing to surrender their freedom for security deserve neither. Let us hope that's not what's on deck for us. It's time to really think and really consider who we are as Americans, who we are as conservatives, and hold tight to each other, to our founding principles, and to the Constitution of the United States. Let's go to 365 ways to drive a liberal crazy. Number 162. Reclaim the language for conservatism. Instead of mainstream media, talk about the old left media. Because the old left media today is making a concerted effort to knock out the new conservative media. And I really feel terrible about saying it. But if you want to keep Facebook as a somewhat neutral platform, then you need to make your voice heard to Facebook. And if you want to make YouTube a neutral platform, you need to make your voice heard to Google. Now, they have every right in the world to shut down Alex Jones, shut down me, shut down anybody that uses their platform. Money talks. So if you don't like what YouTube's doing, get off YouTube. You don't like what Facebook's doing, get off Facebook. Follow your content producers, the content that you want to consume. Follow them to the outlets that will enable them to provide it to you. InfoWars is not going to get knocked out by losing their YouTube channel. They have a robust website. They're also on BitChute and other providers as well. Even the HoloNet, if we get shut down by Facebook, we will persevere. We're on BitChute, we're on Spreaker, we're on iHeart, we're on iTunes, and TuneIn. We'll still be here, even if Facebook slams down the gavel. Money talks, though. So, vote with every penny you have, vote with your likes, vote with your views. And if you don't like what these companies are doing, you have a right not to use them. And we have a right not to put our content there. So, to InfoWars, if you have your principles as conservatives, you can't really complain. Or you can, but don't expect a court or the government to come in and save you. Because once you do that, then you have to look back and realize you're not conservative anymore. Your principles just didn't matter that much. All right, folks. That's it from Phoenix. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. Good night. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America. Good night, everybody.